Welcome back to Sankofa Studios. Today we have a very special guest, Rochester's own Rashaad Parker. This is a brother I'm pleased to say is a friend. He's a fellow artist. He's a collector. He's an art teacher. And he's heavily involved with the youth experience in the art community here in Rochester, New York. And I've personally seen his relationship with young people and art and creativity, and how he really has this emotional and really spiritual connection with these young people in the city when it comes to art. So how you doing today, Rashaad?
I'm doing quite well, Yakub. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh man, I appreciate you being here. So what's going on in your world in 2020? How you doing these days with the COVID and everything happening? How you doing?
I'm doing quite well, man. I am thankful to still be in the game, still be making art, still having the doors be open to Flower City Art Center and have that, ability to still work and also engage young people. When COVID first hit, we were in the middle of a project. We were doing a group project, as a matter of fact. I asked the students to weigh in on the issues of art and social justice, and finding that intersectionality between the 2. And so they decided that they would do a group project that involved a mobile project. And so we are now working on developing a visual proclamation where they are designing front and back for basically bringing awareness to different issues, whether it be police brutality, whether it be immigration laws, whether it be mental health, all of these things that they are definitely dealing with or have been exposed to in one way or another, and bringing that or art form to that information.
Absolutely. So yeah, how's the family? Everybody's well. How the family doing during this?
Family is doing pretty well. I did recently just get a text message last night from my brother's girlfriend, and I learned that he tested positive for COVID. So COVID is very, very real, and it is, affecting my community, my family, and the community at large, of course, to a significant extent. My brother's doing well, though. I'm very happy to say that he is doing well. Of course, he's been confined, and so he's not a threat to anybody else while he's in there, but he's in there nonetheless, alone with COVID, but yet recovering. And so I'm sending good vibes his way, and I hope that everyone listening here tonight will also send good vibes to my brother Rodney.
Absolutely. We will. We will. So where are you from originally? Where were you born and raised? And give me a little taste of the culture, the communities that you grew up in.
Well, right here in Rochester, New York, and West Side, Jefferson Avenue, Hawley Street. From there, moving to the East Side, but always having roots on the West Side because that's where I am from. So the culture here is it is art centric because we do have Garth Fagan, bottom of the bucket, and so we have an incredible legendary dance company to Rochester. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that you and I talked about when we first met. That in fact, we do have these amazing origins of art forms in Rochester, such as Garth Fagan dance, bottom of the bucket. Also, we're one of the only schools in upstate New York that has a school of performing arts. And I can remember, I went to that school, and I can remember a show called Fame that used to come on.
Absolutely.
And man, school was literally modeled after that school in the sense of the layout was almost exact. I mean, we could watch the show on one night and go to school the next day and act out the scenes because the school was built just like what we saw on TV. So that was pretty cool. And I remember that as, a kid growing up and getting accepted into school of performing arts.
So what kind of child were you growing up? How would you describe yourself? Were you ripping and running through the neighborhood? Did they have to chase you down? Or what kind of kid were you growing up?
Well, I have two brothers and a sister. We didn't all grow up together, but there was a long space because I'm the oldest. So there was a long space of it just being me and my mom.
Mhm.
And so in that sense, I was very, attached to her and wanting to just, be wherever she was. But as I got a little bit older, I kind of gained my own independence, and then I was just gone, right? I just wanted to be outside and hang with my friends and, do stuff that kids do, um, but always wanting to, explore art in one way or another, whether it be singing. I used to like to sing a lot or dance with my friends. My mom has like an extensive collection of LPs. She has a whole cedar chest closet full
Absolutely.
of LPs, as a matter of fact. And so, music was kind of my gateway into the arts. And I'll tell you specifically in terms of Afrofuturism and Afrocentric art was looking at, album covers such as
Yes,
Earth, Wind and Fire,
indeed.
Parliament Funkadelic, the
Yeah,
Isley Brothers, you know what I mean?
right.
The Barclays, when you saw those album covers and the art form in which they presented, that I feel like was one of my earliest influences.
Wow, you took me back. The image of the Ohio Players album cover popped in my head. The album called.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely can relate to that. It's interesting you say music because sometimes we forget because of the commercialization of it and the way that it's been industrialized to a certain extent. We forget that music is also a medium where people express themselves artistically. It's not just a money making machine. And I had that same experience. Now, as a child, I can remember specifically I had a teacher named Miss Griffin in fourth grade, which was a long, 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 long time ago. And I remember art day was like Friday or something like that. And they would have this cart and they would wheel it into the classroom and they had paint and crayons and markers and construction paper and scissors and glue. And we would just dig in and just start creating. It wasn't even a guided type of situation, which was probably a good thing. So that leads me to ask you, when you were a child, what are your earliest memories of using art as a medium to express yourself or just engaging with any type of artistic uh, creativity, I should say?
Hmm. Well, other than doing like paper mache with,
Mm-hmm.
flour and water and newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
because, you had to work with what you had. And, we weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but, if we were poor, I didn't know it because my mom never showed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we used what we had. And one of the things I do remember early on is working in paper mache and making my own little models using that medium.
Okay.
I also remember working in
Nice.
clay models and things of that nature, because you could buy those from the store and work with that.
Mm-hmm.
And really Play-Doh,
Play-Doh,
right?
that's right.
Play-Doh, right? That's really what I would
Yeah,
say that was my introduction to like sculpture and form
that's
was Play-Doh.
right.
And and paper mache, bro. Play-Doh and paper mache.
Listen, every once in a while, I still play with the kids' Play-Doh.
Yeah, yeah.
So those early experiences, do you think that they had any influence on you as an artist, or what you find artistically pleasing as a collector and as an artist yourself? What from those days do you still hold on to, even if it's just something that a spiritual connection to
Yeah.
something? What do you still have today that you had then, if anything at all?
I don't have anything today that I had back then, honestly, other than the memory itself of how it made me feel, of how it filled the space and the time, right? Because as I mentioned, it was me and my mom for, me and my uh, first brother is 6 years apart. And, that's on my dad's side. And so in the home initially it was just me and my mom. And so being able to work on art helped me fill the space. It was my, my company, if you
Mm.
will. And so that's one of the things that I do remember in terms of art being a companion.
You know, the reason that I asked that question is because, and this is widely discussed and widely written about. People, it comes up a lot how children, uh, in some ways, have the purest expression of artistic their capacity is almost unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be great if people in their 30s and 40s could still possess a 6-year-old's freedom when
Sure.
playing with Play-Doh or doing finger paints. I think the galleries would have a lot more diversity and be a lot more packed if we still maintain that spiritual connection to creation and expressing ourselves honestly without filters. That's very interesting. So, big question here, and it's a question that I wrestle with a lot. And I don't say I wrestle with it too much, but I feel like I've defeated the question. But the question is, what are the pros and cons of traditional, say, academic art education? And when I'm talking to art, I'm talking in the visual arts. And when I say traditional art education, we know when you get into the institutional arts world, uh, there may be 10 artists that are repeated over and over. We can list them, Van Gogh, and just go with, the European classics and European masters. Their names are repeated over and over again. So
Yes.
what are the pros and cons to having that type of education?
Well, the pro is that it does at least provide some art introduction and education. It does at least provide, some of the tools, some of the forms, some of the styles. Art education is important to know the type of historical context in which art forms began.
Mm-hmm.
However, I feel like that the cons would be that it is not as inclusive or diverse as it should be.
Absolutely.
We know that very rarely Black artists make it into the conversation when it comes down to art education, in a traditional sense. I didn't learn about, Gordon Parks, who is a Rochester treasure, with going to school. That wasn't until I, discovered him on my own.
Yeah.
Outside of the context of being inside of a traditional classroom.
Yeah.
So those things.
Sometimes I find that the self-taught artists are, I'm very biased because I'm self-taught, but the self-taught artist has something that's closer to that purity. And this is just from my experience and the art that I've observed. There's something closer to that purity with those self-taught artists, the ones that go to Hobby Lobby and Michael's and grab a couple tubes of paint and go home and just go to work on their paintings and or whatever medium they're using. And that the output is just something there. I can't really put my finger on what it is. Back in the day, they used to call it primitive. They stopped using that word in anthropology, and it's been a ripple effect where people stop using the word primitive.
Right.
But it's something spiritual and almost like this innate creativity that comes out from those people. So I'm biased. I'm not gonna jump off and get on my stool. So what are some of you mentioned Gordon Parks. Who are some of your favorite artists?
So let's see. Hank Willis Thomas.
Hank Willis Thomas.
Nick Cave.
Mm.
Oh my God, there's so many different artists that I'm influenced by.
Give me a big name, like a big name that everybody should know. One of the masters from.
Well, I feel like Nick Cave is a big name, and everybody should know him. I think that oh my goodness, Mr. Tanner from back in the day.
Henry O. Tanner, yes.
Henry O. Tanner, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
People should know that name. People should know that Garth Fagan from right here in Rochester. I think that he's a national treasure, and I think that people should know who he is in the form of dance. I think that her name is escaping me right now, but she is a famous sculptor from the Renaissance era who worked in
Augusta Savage.
Yes, you know what I mean? And, it was unheard of for, number one, women to be sculpting in the medium in which she used like marble and ivory and these very expensive materials that, was not, indicative of, for Black people to even be using. And then
Mm-hmm.
she turned the narrative on its head by using these, expensive materials in which to document the plight of the African
That's right.
or the, or the poor Black, family. And so
Yes.
that in and of itself was very profound.
Yeah, if there ever was, and it said that Aaron Douglas is the father of the Harlem Renaissance.
Yes, Aaron
And
Douglas.
I like to say, if there ever was a mother of the Harlem Renaissance, it would be Augusta Savage.
Yes.
She had a studio at that time where many of the Harlem Renaissance artists found their roots or laid their foundations when they came to New York from different cities, when they came to Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you define success as an artist and as a person? Like, how do you define success? Everybody has a different definition. As an artist and collector and art educator, how do you define success? And I want to say something too real quick before you answer that. I say art educator because and I want the listeners to understand why I say art educator to people like yourself. I consider myself to be an art educator. Even though we don't work in those institutions or for those institutions, the impact that I've seen you personally have with people in the community in regards to art makes you an art educator of the highest caliber. To me personally, I'm just giving you your props right now. So
No,
the
I
question,
really appreciate
did you get the question? Should I repeat it? I've got to talking. How do you define
how do
success?
I define success?
Yes.
So I define success in my role as a mentor for other African American and people of color, visual artists who are coming up and want to pursue that as a career.
Mm-hmm.
I manage a program called Expanding the Field here at Flower City Art Center.
Mm-hmm.
And in that role, I'm able to provide scholarship opportunities to students of color. And so they can come here to the Art Center and take a free art class. They can also have open studio time. They can work on a professional portfolio for college admission. They can come with me on art excursions to the Albright Knox Museum in Buffalo, which was one of the first contemporary art museums in North America. The Birchfield Penny, Squeaky Wheel Multimedia Center. So, kind of incorporating multimedia art aesthetics, I think is very, very key. And getting them to become aware of these different art mediums and how they work and intersect, I think that is very successful. Seeing their minds be expanded with what they're able to do as young visual artists is successful for me. And also, in my own practice or in my own way, I feel that art is successful, or I'm defining success as an artist by the opportunities that I'm able to create and also pursue and also and achieve, right, successfully. That, when I set out to, have a show at RIT Space downtown, and I make that happen, not only for myself, but for other artists in a collaborative effort, that to me is success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're getting close to wrapping it up soon. I got a question about art, mindfulness, and meditation. And you hear a lot of talk about mindfulness and art and painting, and not just painting, but the visual arts being used as a vehicle leading towards healing with people with depression and anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm wondering, how do you use art in this way, if you do use it in this way, and what do you think of these types of practices as a form of healing?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I definitely do use art as a form of healing and therapy and catharticism, if you will. The physical, working with your hands and, having a task or a methodology for making something happen is all, I would say, indicative of therapy, because you are now focused on this work as opposed to the problem. And even the work may present a problem, but it's a different problem, right? It's a different set of problems that you're working through within the art medium itself. And in some ways, by doing that, you're able to figure out the answer to the other problems that you might have.
Absolutely.
Right? So that I've found that synergy to be very, very profound in working through art and working through my problems as well. So I'm departing from my problems in order to work on art. And in that process, I'm able to figure out then how to handle those all the problems.
Absolutely. There's something about those moments as well, and you paint as well. So you catch a quiet moment when you can hear the brush against the canvas.
Yes.
And it's, if I could extend that moment and that sound to 1 hour,
Yeah.
just that moment to an hour, that would be incredible, an incredibly healing situation. And getting those small doses is beneficial as well. I agree. There's actually, art therapy became a thing in the 1940s, but later became popularized. And there's something called MBAT, mindfulness-based art therapy, and it's
Okay.
something that I think that I wish that previous generations had access to, this type of therapeutic process where you can actually uh, engage in self therapy at home with just a few tubes of paint and some brushes and some quiet space. You can really achieve something special. So we're gonna get ready to close in a second, but I want to ask you some rapid fire questions just to get to know you a little bit better, and let the listeners get to know you a little bit better. Uh, so you grew up in Rochester, New York. It's a city. It's not a small town, right?
Right.
How would you describe the neighborhood that you grew up in? Was it, the hood? Was it the suburbs? What type of community did you grow up in?
Okay, so I grew up in a very residential community. People went to work every day and maintained their house as well as their lawn for the most part.
Yeah.
People had some interaction with each other. It wasn't like every day you come to my house, I come to your house situation.
Mm-hmm.
But those of us who are around the same age, kids have a tendency to naturally bond or to naturally seek each other out. And so we did have that commonality in terms of like people that were around our same age. And so we got to know those families because we played together. We also had an opportunity to work for like a community projects. There was a community center not too far away. So when it came down to, community engagement, there was some of that happening as well. And my little brother played football at, for 33 school. And so by him playing sports, that really definitely got a lot of families and neighbors talking and fellowshipping with one another.
That's excellent. I really would like to hear people describe the communities that they come from, because there's an outside narrative, a narrative that comes from outside about Black communities in particular. And as we know, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, but it was a community. There was grandmothers and mothers and fathers and people networking and fellowshipping with one another. It was actually a very beautiful thing to behold. But if you watch the news like people do today that are from other places, when they hear, oh, this guy, you're from Chicago, it's like, whoa,
Right.
that place. Or they hear you're from, the inner city Rochester, and they're like, whoa, you're from the city. And it's like, relax. There's a community here, and there's
Yes.
real people here. That's a beautiful thing. So here are the rapid fire questions. What is your, and I'd like for you to elaborate a little bit on this one. What is your
Okay.
least favorite word?
My least favorite word is actually.
Actually?
Mhm.
Why
I
is
feel like
that?
it's I feel like it's so overused. I feel like it's a word used to like present this sense of intelligence that may or may not be valid.
Like,
Um,
actually, yeah.
right, right. It's just one of those words, man, that people definitely overuse.
Okay, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word is effervescence.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
That's next door neighbors with actually.
No, it's not. No, it's totally
I'm messing with you.
not.
So, what profession other than your own would you like to try?
I would like to try cooking professionally as a chef.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's good.
Yeah, I make gourmet sandwiches right now. So yeah.
Right. Yep, I come grab one. But and lastly, before we close, big question here. If this was the last conversation that you were to have in your life, the conversation we're having right now, what would you want me? What message would you want me, or would you like me to tell the rest of the world about you? This is your last conversation on Earth. What would you like for me to tell everyone else?
I would want you to tell everyone else that Rashaad had um, good energy, that being in his presence, you knew that this was a guy who had overcome many, many challenges, many, many struggles, many, many heartaches and heartbreaks, but he persevered. And not only did he persevere, but he used that to passionately, present others with opportunity.
Mm, powerful. So we're gonna close now. I want to say thank you for spending this time with me today, and for sharing,
Mhm.
telling us about yourself and things that you're doing. And I would like for you to share where you can be reached. Where can we find you? What social media, email? How can we find Rashaad Parker in Rochester, New York?
Cool. So I just want to say real quick that right now I'm working on my thesis at Visual Studies Workshop.
Excellent.
That's located at 31 Prince Street in Rochester. And this doesn't happen to everybody, but it has happened to me, to where I have recently gotten a grant to be able to have my thesis be funded. And so this idea of documentation and telling people stories and working with the Black Lives Matter movement, which I was doing just from a personal freelance perspective prior to being approached, has now been funded, in which made me present that as my thesis in a show called Rock City Speaks, which does present, face-to-face interviews with people on the street, telling their stories, expressing themselves artistically, because we know that, when you talk about protests, when you talk about the movement, these people speaking out and even screaming out and yelling out as a form of artistic expression.
Yes, indeed.
More than that, when we look at what it looks like in terms of the face mask or the shields made out of laundry baskets, or different, or the umbrellas used as shields or whatever, when you begin to look at that in its entirety, that is in fact to me an artistic expression, and I have the privilege of being able to document that for our times.
And
Not
that
only
grant,
that,
that was from, you said, the Rochester Area Community uh,
foundation, yes.
Foundation. Okay.
Yes. So I just had to put that out there, man, because I am completely humbled and grateful that that happened for me. And, and that came from, again, being humble and being a man of service,
Mm.
because I have volunteered and been in the service industry for a number of years. And so if you stick with anything long enough, I promise you, your time will come. The universe will smile upon you. I'm living proof of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, but I also wanted to say then that my Facebook is just Rashaad Parker, Rashaad, Parker, Parker on Facebook.
I'll put a
Um,
link here. I'll put a link here somewhere, some links where people can reach you.
all right,
So,
cool.
so what about Instagram and
My
Twitter?
Instagram is Mr. Parker, Mistahparkah,
Mhm.
and you'll see a lot of my photography on IG, of course. And my website is actually under construction. I just got a phone call from my web developer during this interview, so I'm gonna have to call him back right after I finish this so I can get that squared away. But once it is up and running, it'll just be my name, RashaadParker.com.
Okay, so everybody, I'll put a link here on the screen, and I'll also put a link below for you to go ahead and have access to the brother and be able to engage him. Everybody follow. I really got this idea in my head that we can break the algorithm if all artists followed each other. Just stop thinking about it. If every artist just followed one another, it would be,
Yeah.
done deal. So I think that yeah, that's really important. I just want to say I appreciate everything you do, brother. And I saw you out there on the front lines in the midst of everything that was going on, the gas, and you was out there on the ground. So I tip my hat to you, brother, for your sacrifice, and much respect for that. So again, everybody follow Rashaad. You can find me, of course, at Sankofa_Studios on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me at Sankofa Studios on Facebook. Sankofa Studios on Reddit, Sankofa Studios on Pinterest, everywhere on Twitch, everywhere that you have social media, you can find me. But more importantly, you can find me and this podcast here at sankofastudios.com. And this has been great, brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you're doing, Yakub, as well. I consider you more than a friend, like a brother to me. You have been there for me, encouraging me along this journey. I look at you as just a mass producer. Every time I describe Yakub, I always say, it's that brother. He's like a manufacturing artist. This brother just cranks it out. He cranks it out. And I admire that. I really do. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't mind being your little brother.
Okay.
I'm messing with you. I'm old now. Yeah, I give it up. But yeah, thank you, and I appreciate it. And like I said, everybody go give him a follow. And until next time, when we have our next artist talks, we're gonna have somebody else from somewhere else in the country. Come on in and join the conversation. Comment below, and again, give the brother a follow. Peace.
Peace.